Mockery started before the first cock's crow, as it always did. Sera huddled in the corner of the servants' quarters, her thin blanket offering little protection against the pre-dawn cold that crept through the cracks in the timber walls. Beyond the wooden partition, she heard them stirring, the pack warriors preparing for the lunar ritual, their voices rough with sleep and anticipation. "Where's the wolfless wretch?" Draven's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. "Fetch her. The ceremonial grounds won't prepare themselves." Sera closed her eyes and reached inward, searching once more for the presence that should have awakened 7 winters past. In the ancient ways of the Silver Crest Pack, every child received their wolf spirit on the night of their 16th moon. The transformation was sacred, a gift from the moon goddess herself, proof of belonging, of worthiness, of life itself. Sera was 23 now. The space within her remained silent as a tomb. Wolfless. The word was a curse in the old tongue, spoken with the same revulsion as kinslayer or oathbreaker. To be Omega was already to stand at the lowest rung of pack law. To be Omega and wolfless, she might as well have been a ghost haunting the longhouse halls. But she was no ghost, she was flesh and bone and target. The door to her chamber crashed open, torchlight flooding the small space. Kael stood in the doorway, her lady's gown of fox fur and doeskin, making her look every bit the beta-born daughter of the pack's warchief. Behind her, 3 other she-wolves waited, their eyes already gleaming with the amber light of barely restrained beasts. "Rise, phantom!" Kaela's voice dripped honey over poison. "Or do you require an invitation, perhaps a formal summons from the Alpha himself?" Sera stood slowly, pulling her patched wool cloak around her shoulders. She had learned long ago that haste only fed their hunger for sport. Let them see calm, let them wonder what thoughts moved behind her quiet gaze. "The Alpha requires the ceremonial grounds prepared for the full moon rite," Kaela continued, circling her like a hawk assessing a field mouse. "Every sacred stone must be cleansed with ash water, every offering bowl polished until it reflects the stars, every torch post wrapped with fresh cedar boughs. You have until the sun breaks the eastern mountains. 2 hours, perhaps less." The work Kaela described would take half a day, even with multiple hands. They both knew this. "As the Alpha wills," Sera said quietly, moving toward the door. "As the Alpha wills," one of the she-wolves mimicked in a whining tone, and cruel laughter followed. "Look at her, meek as a newborn lamb. How did such weakness ever come from wolf blood?" The words should have pierced her. Once they had drawn blood as surely as claws. But Sera had developed a different sort of armor over the turning seasons, one woven not from fur and fang but from something deeper. Something she could not name, yet felt stirring in her breast when the old words were spoken, a warmth that pulsed in time with her heartbeat, a whisper that murmured, "Patience. Watch, remember." She moved past them toward the narrow passage, but Draven blocked her path. He was a mountain of muscle and battle scars, his wolf always prowling just beneath his skin, making his eyes flash gold even in his man form. The son of the pack's master of arms, he had never known a day without power. Not so swift, Omega. His hand shot out, iron fingers closing around her wrist hard enough to grind bone. "You'll show proper deference. On your knees." The warmth in Sera's chest flared white-hot. For a heartbeat, no more than the space between lightning and thunder, something surged through her. Not wolf. Something older. Something that made the torchlight flicker and the shadows deepen. Draven's confident sneer faltered. His pupils dilated and his grip went slack. He stumbled backward as though struck, confusion and something almost like fear flashing across his scarred features. "What?" he began, but Kaela interrupted. Sera slipped past them and into the cold morning air before anyone could speak again. Behind her she heard urgent whispers. "Did you feel that?" "Feel what? The cold?" "No, something wrong. Like the air before an earthquake." Sera's hands trembled as she stepped onto the frost-covered earth. The Silvercrest territory spread before her in shades of silver and shadow, the ancient forest to the north where the old gods still walked, the long houses and round halls of the pack village nestled in the valley, and beyond them, the sacred ceremonial grounds where the stones had stood since the first alphas walked the world. She had felt it too. That moment when Draven's dominance had crumbled like wet parchment. When something inside her had pushed back without her willing it, without her understanding. It was happening with greater frequency now. These flickers of, what? Power? Impossible. Wolfless Omegas possessed nothing. They were vessels meant to serve, to submit, to fade into the tapestry of pack life like background thread. Then why did her reflection in the water barrel sometimes show eyes that flashed silver instead of common brown? Why did the ravens cease their calling when she passed beneath their trees? Why did her dreams overflow with visions of moonlit temples and voices chanting in the old tongue, words she had never learned but somehow understood? Sera gathered her tools, rough-spun cloths, buckets of ash water, cedar boughs cut the day before, and began the long walk to the ceremonial grounds. Around her, the pack stirred to waking. Wolves emerged from their dwellings, stretching and yawning, their beasts content and present in ways Sera could only imagine. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children laughed as they chased each other through the muddy lanes. She was halfway through scrubbing the first offering stone when she felt it, a shift in the very fabric of the world, like the held breath before a storm breaks. The hair on her arms stood rigid, and the warmth in her chest suddenly blazed into something close to agony. Sera gasped and dropped her cloth, pressing both hands to her sternum. Her heart hammered like a war drum, and the world tilted on its axis. Visions crashed through her mind. A massive silver wolf racing through moonlight, eyes ancient beyond measure, symbols carved into living stone, glowing with otherworldly light, a voice, deep as the roots of mountains, speaking a single word, awaken. Child. The vision shattered like morning frost. Sera looked up to find Alpha Aldrich standing before her, his presence as commanding as the grandfather oak in the village square. He was ancient by pack standards, 50 winters at least, his face a map of scars earned in territorial wars and beast hunts. His authority was absolute, his word was law, and his wolf was said to be the strongest in 3 generations. Forgive me, Alpha. Sera struggled to her feet, dropping her eyes in submission. I will finish. You are pale as milk water. His voice was gravel and steel, but something in his tone gave her pause. When did you last break fast? The question startled her. Alpha Aldrich rarely acknowledged her existence beyond commands delivered through his war council. Yesterday morning, my Alpha. His weathered face creased into a deeper frown. Go to the cook fires. Tell old Marta that I command she feed you. Then return to your duties. Sera's throat tightened. Kindness from the Alpha was rarer than summer snow. My gratitude, Alpha. He waved her away and turned toward the longhouse, but paused after several strides. Without turning, he spoke again, his voice carrying strange weight. There is a reckoning coming, girl. I have seen it in the smoke of the oracle fires. The old blood stirs. When it wakes fully, every wolf in this territory will feel the ground shift beneath their paws. Then he was gone, leaving Sera alone with her hammering heart and the echo of prophecy. Old blood, reckoning. She looked down at her hands and saw them shaking. Saw something else as well, a faint shimmer beneath her skin, like starlight trapped beneath water visible only for a breath before vanishing. The mockery, the pain, the years of being nothing. All of it had led to this dawn. Sera did not understand what was awakening within her, but she knew with the certainty of bone-deep instinct that Alpha Aldrich spoke truth. Everything was about to change. And the wolves who had laughed at the wolfless Omega were about to learn that some powers did not come from beasts at all. Some powers were far, far older. Old Marta's cook fire blazed in the center of the communal hall, casting dancing shadows on the timber walls. The elderly Omega woman looked up from her iron pot as Sera entered, steam rising around her weathered face like morning mist. Child, Marta said softly, her milky eye, blind from a hunting accident decades past, somehow seeing more than her good one. You look half-starved and twice haunted. Sit. The Alpha commanded that I heard what the Alpha commanded. Marta ladled thick porridge into a wooden bowl and pressed it into Sera's hands. The whole pack heard. Aldrich doesn't raise his voice for nothing, and he certainly doesn't concern himself with the feeding of servants. Something's stirring. Sera sat on the rough bench and ate slowly, savoring each bite. The porridge was mixed with wild honey and dried berries, a luxury she hadn't tasted in months. Around them, the hall remained mostly empty. The warriors and their families would break fast after the full moon rite, as tradition demanded. "You've been having the dreams again," Marta said. It wasn't a question. Sera's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "How did you—" "Because I've been having them too." The old woman settled onto the bench beside her, bones creaking. "Not as strong as yours, I'd wager, but strong enough. The old ones are speaking, Sera. They're calling to something in you that the rest of us have forgotten." "I'm wolfless, Marta. The old ones wouldn't speak to someone like me, wouldn't they?" Marta's good eye fixed on her with unsettling intensity. "Tell me, child, what do you know of the first wolves? The true history, not the tales the Alphas tell around ceremonial fires." Sera shook her head. "Only what everyone knows. The moon goddess blessed the first humans with wolf spirits, creating our kind. The strongest became alphas, the loyal became betas, and the nurturing became omegas. We've lived by pack law ever since." "That's the simple version. The version for children." Marta leaned closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "But there's an older story. One that only the eldest omegas remember, passed down through our bloodline since the ancient times. Before there were alphas and betas and omegas, there were the moon speakers." The word sent a shiver down Sera's spine. The warmth in her chest flickered to life again, recognizing something in that ancient title. "The moon speakers were the moon goddess's chosen vessels," Marta continued. "They didn't need wolves. They were the bridge between our world and the divine. They could call down the moon's power itself, bend it to their will, speak directly to the spirits of earth and sky. They were Alpha nor Omega. They stood outside the hierarchy, above it. And the packs feared them. What happened to them?" Marta's expression darkened. "The Alphas happened. As wolf blood spread and packs grew strong, the Alphas wanted absolute power. They couldn't tolerate anyone who stood above pack law, so they hunted the moon speakers, killed most of them, forced the survivors into hiding, or into the Omega caste where they could be controlled. Their gifts suppressed generation after generation until even they forgot what they were." Sera's heart hammered. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're not wolfless, child." Marta gripped her hand with surprising strength. "You're something far older. The blood has been sleeping in your family line for generations, but now it's waking. I can see it in you. The way the shadows move differently around you. The way the air tastes like lightning before a storm when your emotions rise. You're a moon speaker, Sera, perhaps the first to fully awaken in 300 years. "That's impossible. I'm just—" The door to the communal hall crashed open. Sera and Marta fell silent as a group of warriors entered, their voices loud and boisterous. At their center walked someone Sera had never seen before, a young man, perhaps 25 winters, with black hair that fell past his shoulders, and eyes the color of winter ice. Every head in the hall turned toward him. Even the warriors seemed to shrink in his presence, their wolves recognizing something that made them instinctively bare their throats. "That's Kael Thornheart," Marta breathed. "Son of the Northern Pack's Alpha. He arrived last night for the treaty negotiations. They say his wolf is a monster, largest seen in 50 years. They say he's killed 17 challengers in ritual combat. They say far too much." Sera jumped. The young man stood directly before them, though she hadn't heard him approach. Up close his presence was even more overwhelming. Not cruel like Draven, but powerful in a way that made the air feel heavy. His ice-blue eyes fixed on Sera, and something flickered in their depths. Recognition? Confusion? His nostrils flared slightly, as if catching an unfamiliar scent. "You're the Omega without a wolf," he said. His voice was deep, measured, but not unkind. "Neither. I am, my lord." Sera kept her eyes down as protocol demanded. "Look at me." It was a command but spoken softly. Sera raised her eyes to meet his, and the world seemed to tilt. For a moment, just a breath, the hall around them faded, and she saw something impossible. Kael standing in a circle of silver light, his wolf beside him, massive and black as midnight. But there was someone else in the vision too, a figure glowing with moonlight, power radiating from them in waves. The figure turned, and Sera saw her own face. Kael staggered backward, his hand flying to his chest. His eyes were wide with shock. "What are you?" he whispered. Before Sera could respond, Kayla's voice cut through the hall like a whip. "Kael Thornheart, what business have you with pack servants?" She swept toward them, her finest gown swirling around her legs, her smile sharp and territorial. "Surely the son of the Northern Alpha has better company to keep than—" "I was curious." Kael's mask of composure had returned, but his eyes remained locked on Sera. "Your Alpha speaks highly of his pack's efficiency. I wanted to see for myself." "Well, now you've seen." Kaela hooked her arm through his, practically dragging him away. "Come. My father wishes to discuss the border disputes before the ceremony begins. You'll find the conversation far more stimulating than staring at servants." Kael allowed himself to be led away, but he glanced back once, his expression unreadable. Then he was gone, and Sera could breathe again. "By the goddess," Marta whispered. "Did you feel that? The way his wolf reacted to you?" Sera's hands were shaking so badly she had to set down her bowl. "What just happened?" "His wolf recognized you. Not as prey, not as a packmate, as something else, something equal." Marta's face was pale. The old texts speak of this. When a moonspeaker fully awakens, the strongest wolves can sense it. They're drawn to that power like iron to lodestone. "But I haven't awakened anything. I'm still—" "You're already starting to manifest." Marta gestured to Sera's bowl. The porridge inside was frozen solid, ice crystals glittering in the firelight. Sera gasped. She hadn't felt cold, hadn't willed anything to happen, but there it was, impossible evidence of power she shouldn't possess. "You need to be careful, child, very careful." Marta's voice was urgent now. "When the Alphas realize what you are, they'll do one of two things: try to control you, or try to kill you. Neither is a fate I'd wish on my worst enemy." Sera stood on shaking legs. The ceremonial grounds still needed finishing, and the sun was climbing higher. But everything had changed in the span of a single meal. She wasn't just the wolfless Omega anymore. She was something ancient, something dangerous, something that had been hunted to near extinction. She was a moonspeaker. And if Marta was right, her awakening had already begun. "Go," Marta said gently. "Finish your duties, pretend nothing has changed. But tonight, after the full moon rite, meet me at the old willow by the eastern creek. There's much you need to learn, and very little time to learn it." Sera nodded and turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Marta, why are you helping me? If the Alphas find out—" The old woman's smile was sad and fierce at once. "Because my grandmother was a moonspeaker, child. They broke her, forced her into Omega servitude, made her forget what she was. But before she died, she made me promise. If the blood ever woke again in our line, I would protect it. You're that promise fulfilled." Tears stung Sera's eyes. For the first time in 7 years, she didn't feel entirely alone. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank me by surviving," Marta replied. "Now go. The day grows short, and the moon rises whether we're ready or not." Sera stepped back into the morning cold, her mind reeling. Around her, the pack continued its daily rhythms: warriors training, children playing, elders gathering to smoke pipes and share stories. Normal life, unchanged. But Sera knew the truth now. Beneath the surface of that normalcy, ancient powers were stirring. And when they fully awoke, nothing in Silvercrest, or any pack, would ever be the same. The sun had barely crested the mountains when Sera finished the last of her preparations. Every sacred stone gleamed. Every offering bowl reflected the morning sky like mirrors. The cedar boughs wrapped around the torch posts filled the air with their sharp, clean scent. She stood back to survey her work, exhaustion pulling at her bones. The ceremonial grounds formed a perfect circle, 12 ancient stones arranged by the first alphas, each one carved with symbols in the old tongue. At the center stood the moonstone, a pillar of white granite that legend said had fallen from the sky itself. Sera had always felt something when she touched the moonstone during her cleaning duties, a hum, like distant music. Today, that hum was louder, insistent. She glanced around. The grounds were empty. The pack wouldn't arrive for another hour at least. Almost without thinking, Sera approached the moonstone and placed her palm against its smooth surface. The world exploded into light. Vision slammed into her consciousness like a flood breaking through a dam. She saw the ancient past, wolves running beneath a moon 3 times its normal size, their eyes glowing with divine fire. She saw the moon speakers, dozens of them, standing in circles just like this one, calling down power from the heavens. She saw their destruction, alphas turning on them, fear and jealousy transforming into violence. Blood on sacred ground, power suppressed, knowledge buried, and then she saw the future, or a possible future, herself standing in this very circle, light pouring from her body like liquid silver. The pack on their knees, not in submission but in reverence. And beside her stood a massive black wolf with ice-blue eyes, its presence both terrible and magnificent. The blood remembers, a voice whispered in her mind. The power sleeps no longer. Choose, daughter of the old ways. Hide and perish or rise and reclaim what was stolen. Get away from that stone. Sera jerked her hand back as if burned. Draven stormed across the ceremonial grounds, fury written across his scarred face. Behind him came 6 other warriors, all of them radiating aggression. What do you think you're doing? Draven grabbed her arm and yanked her away from the moonstone. You dare defile the sacred stone with your wolfless touch. I was only cleaning. Liar! His hand cracked across her face, hard enough to split her lip. The taste of copper flooded her mouth. I saw you, pressing your filthy hands against it like you had the right. Like you were worthy. The warmth in Sera's chest ignited into an inferno. Not now, she thought desperately. Not here, with witnesses. But her power had its own will. It had been suppressed for 23 years, denied and buried and starved. Now, awakened by the moonstone's ancient magic, it would not be contained. Silver light erupted from Sera's skin. Draven flew backward as if struck by an invisible fist, crashing into 2 of his warriors. They all went down in a tangle of limbs. The remaining warriors stumbled back, their wolves pushing to the surface in response to a threat they couldn't comprehend. What are you? One of them gasped. Sera looked down at her hands. They glowed with moonlight, that same silver radiance she'd seen in her visions. Power coursed through her veins like lightning, intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. She's a witch, Draven roared, struggling to his feet. An abomination! Kill her! 3 warriors shifted, their bodies twisting and reforming into their wolf shapes, massive beasts of fur and fang and savage instinct. They circled her, growls rumbling from their chests like thunder. Sera's heart hammered with panic. She didn't know how to control this power, didn't know how to fight, didn't know how to trust the old blood. That voice whispered again. Let it guide you. The first wolf lunged. Sera raised her hand on instinct, and a bolt of silver light shot from her palm. It struck the wolf mid-leap, sending it tumbling across the ground, whimpering. The creature wasn't dead. Its chest still rose and fell, but it didn't rise to attack again. The other 2 wolves hesitated, their animal minds recognizing something their human sides couldn't accept. This wasn't just power, this was authority, the kind that predated pack law, that reached back to the very dawn of their species. Enough! The command cracked through the air like a whip. Every wolf in the ceremonial grounds, shifted and human alike, immediately dropped into submissive postures. Even Draven lowered his head, though fury still blazed in his eyes. Alpha Aldrich strode into the circle, his presence filling the space like a physical force. Behind him walked Kael Thornheart, the Northern Alpha's son, his ice-blue eyes fixed on Sera with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Explain," Aldrich commanded, his voice deadly calm. Now, Draven found his courage first. "Alpha, this thing attacked us. She's no Omega. She's some kind of demon using dark magic to— I asked her, not you." Aldrich's gaze shifted to Sera, and she saw something in his weathered face she'd never expected. Not fear, not anger, recognition. "Speak, child. What are you?" The silver light still danced across Sera's skin, impossible to hide now. The secret was out. The carefully maintained lie of her wolflessness had shattered like broken glass. "I don't know," she whispered. "I truly don't, my Alpha. I've never been able to control it before, it just woke up." "You're a moon speaker." Kael's voice was quiet but carried absolute certainty. He stepped forward, ignoring Aldrich's warning growl. "I've read about them in the old records. My grandfather kept forbidden texts hidden in our archive. I thought they were myth." "They're no myth." Aldrich's expression had gone grim. "My grandfather told me stories before he passed. Said his grandmother had been one, before the purges. They can channel the moon goddess's power directly without need of a wolf spirit." He looked at Sera with something almost like pity. "You should have stayed hidden, girl. This changes everything." "She attacked pack warriors," Draven spat. "Pack law demands death for such crimes." "She defended herself," Kael countered. "I saw you strike her, saw your wolves move to kill. What law permits that?" "You have no authority here, Northern Pup." "Careful, Draven." Aldrich's voice went cold. "Kael speaks as representative of his father's pack. Insult him at your peril." He turned back to Sera, his ancient eyes weighing her fate. "The full moon rite begins at sundown. Until then you will be confined to the holding chamber beneath the longhouse. I need time to consult with the Council of Elders and decide what is to be done with you. Alpha, please, do not make this harder than it must be." Two guards stepped forward to flank her. "You are not accused of crime, Sera, but you are too dangerous to walk free until we understand what you are and what you can do." As the guards led her away, Sera caught Kael's gaze once more. His expression was fierce, protective in a way that made no sense. He was a stranger, the son of a rival pack's alpha. He should want her dead or controlled like the others. But instead he gave her the slightest nod, a promise perhaps, or a warning. "This is not finished," she heard him say to Aldrich as distance grew between them. "The old laws speak of moon speakers. If she truly is one, you cannot simply imprison or execute her. The treaty between Earth and Moon forbids it. Those laws are ancient history. History has a way of becoming present, Alpha Aldrich. As you're about to discover." Then Sera was pushed through a doorway and down into darkness, the sounds of the waking pack fading above her. The holding chamber was cold, damp, carved from the living rock beneath the longhouse. A single torch burned in a wall sconce, casting dancing shadows. She was alone, truly alone. And despite Marta's warnings, despite her own suspicions, she was utterly unprepared for what her awakening had unleashed. The guards locked the heavy oak door behind her. Their footsteps receded up the stone stairs. Sera slumped against the wall and let the tears come. Silver light still flickered beneath her skin, the power refusing to fully recede now that it had tasted freedom. She was a moon speaker, something out of legend, something her own kind had hunted to extinction, and in a few short hours, the Council of Elders would decide her fate. Above her, she heard the pack gathering, voices raised in preparation for the full moon rite. They would dance and feast and honor the moon goddess, never knowing that one of the goddess's true chosen sat imprisoned in the darkness below their feet. Sera closed her eyes and reached inward, toward that well of silver power. "You called me daughter of the old ways. she thought toward the presence she'd felt at the moonstone. If that's true, if I'm truly what they say I am, then help me, please. Show me what to do. For a long moment only silence answered. Then, soft as snowfall, the voice returned. The moon rises tonight, daughter, and when it does, all debts will be called due. All suppressed powers will break free. All hidden truths will stand revealed. You are not the only one who has been sleeping. The question is, will you be ready when the others wake? The words should have comforted her. Instead, they filled Sera with a dread deeper than anything she'd felt before. Because if there were others like her, other moonspeakers hidden among the packs, their blood dormant for generations, then, tonight's full moon would do more than decide her fate. It would shatter the world as the wolves knew it. And Sera, the Wolfless Omega who had been laughed at and beaten and dismissed for 7 long years, would stand at the center of the storm. Time moved strangely in the darkness of the holding chamber. Sera sat with her back against the cold stone wall, watching the silver light beneath her skin pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She'd tried to suppress it, to push it back down into whatever depths it had emerged from, but the power had its own will now. It wanted to be seen, to be used, to be free. Footsteps echoed on the stairs above. Sera tensed, expecting guards or perhaps the Council of Elders come to pass judgment early. Instead, a familiar voice called softly through the door. Sera? Child, are you hurt? Marta? Sera scrambled to her feet as the door creaked open. The old Omega slipped inside, carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. Her weathered face was tight with worry. I bribed the guard with fresh honey cakes and my silence about his nightly visits to the widow Brenna. Marta set down the bundle and gripped Sera's shoulders, examining her by torchlight. The whole pack is talking about what happened at the ceremonial grounds. They're saying you struck down 3 warriors with lightning from your hands. They're saying you're a demon, a curse, a moon speaker. Sera's voice was hollow. Like you said, Marta's expression softened with something like pride mixed with sorrow. The blood woke faster than I expected. Stronger, too. You must have powerful ancestors in your line, child. What good is power if it only brings death? Sera gestured at the stone walls surrounding them. The council meets at sunset. Alpha Aldrich said they'll decide what to do with me. The council is divided. Marta unwrapped the bundle, revealing dark traveling clothes, a water skin, dried meat, and a small knife. I have ears everywhere, and I've been listening. Elder Thorn wants you executed. Says you're too dangerous to live. Elder Mora argues for binding your power with the old rituals, making you serve the pack's will. But Elder Kessa... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Kessa is the oldest among them. She remembers her grandmother's stories of moonspeakers. She's arguing that killing you would bring the moon goddess's wrath upon Silvercrest. And Alpha Aldrich? What does he think? He's conflicted. I've never seen him so torn. Marta pressed the knife into Sera's hand. But there's another complication. The Northern Alpha's son, Kael Thornheart. He's demanding to speak at the council meeting. Claims he has knowledge of ancient laws that protect moonspeakers. Sera's heart stuttered at Kael's name. She remembered the way he'd looked at her in the ceremonial grounds, not with fear or disgust, but with something fierce and protective. Why would he help me? He doesn't even know me, doesn't he? Marta's good eye gleamed with knowing. You felt it too, didn't you? When your eyes met, that recognition? I don't know what I felt. But that was a lie. Sera knew exactly what she'd felt, a connection that transcended logic, as if her soul had recognized his across the space between them. It doesn't matter. He's the son of a rival Alpha. He's here for treaty negotiations, not to save a Wolfless Omega. You're not Wolfless anymore, child. You're something far greater. Marta gripped her hand. But you need to understand, the council isn't your only problem. There are factions within the pack who won't wait for an official judgment. Draven is gathering supporters as we speak. They plan to storm this chamber tonight, during the full moon rite when everyone is distracted, and execute you themselves. Ice flooded Sera's veins. How do you know this? Because Draven is a fool who drinks too much and talks too freely around servants. Marta's voice turned urgent. You need to escape, Sera, tonight before the moon rises. I've arranged everything, a horse waiting in the eastern woods, supplies, maps to guide you to the free territories beyond Packlands. I can't run. Where would I go? What would I do? You'd live. Marta's voice cracked. You'd have a chance to learn your gifts, to become what you were meant to be. Stay here, and you'll die, either by the council's decree or by Draven's treachery. Sera looked at the traveling clothes, at the knife, at the hope in Marta's eyes. Every instinct screamed at her to accept, to flee into the night and never look back. But something else whispered beneath those instincts, something that sounded like the voice from the moonstone. Running is not your path, daughter. You are meant to stand and face what comes, to transform what is into what must be. I can't run, Sera said aloud. If I flee, it proves them right, proves I'm dangerous, uncontrollable, something to be feared and hunted. But if I stay, if I face the council and speak my truth, they'll kill you. Maybe, Sera met Marta's gaze steadily, or maybe they'll listen. Maybe Kael's ancient laws will protect me. Maybe there's a way to change things without running or hiding, or pretending to be less than I am. You sound like your grandmother. Tears glistened in Marta's eyes. Brave and foolish in equal measure. She stood her ground too, you know. Tried to make the pack understand that moonspeakers weren't a threat. They broke her for it. Then I'll be smarter than she was. Stronger. Sera squeezed the old woman's hand. But I need your help, Marta. I need to learn everything you know about moonspeakers before sunset. Every scrap of knowledge, every fragment of memory. If I'm going to convince the council I'm not a threat, I need to understand what I am. Marta studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, child. If you're determined to walk into the fire, at least I can arm you with knowledge. She settled onto the floor, her old bones protesting. Sit. We have hours yet before sunset. Let me tell you of the old ways, of the bargain struck between the moon goddess and the first wolves, and of the power that runs through your veins. For the next hours, Marta spoke in hushed tones, weaving stories that reached back centuries. She told of how the moonspeakers had been the goddess's voice on earth, mediating between wolf packs and ensuring balance. She explained the source of their power, not wolf spirits, but direct connection to lunar energy itself. She described abilities Sera hadn't even imagined: shielding, healing, calling down moonfire, reading the threads of fate. But the greatest gift, Marta said, her voice dropping to a whisper, is the true howl. When a moonspeaker sings the ancient words under the full moon, every wolf within hearing must stop and listen. Their beasts have no choice. The call bypasses pack bonds, bypasses alpha dominance, reaches directly to the primal wolf soul. It's said that the first moonspeakers could call entire armies to peace with a single song. That's why the alphas feared them, Sera realized. With that power, moonspeakers could undermine their authority. Exactly. An alpha rules through force and dominance. But a moonspeaker rules through something older, the divine right granted by the goddess herself. The two powers were never meant to compete, but... Marta sighed. Fear makes monsters of us all. Above them, the sounds of preparation grew louder. The full moon rite was approaching. Soon the pack would gather at the ceremonial grounds. And Sera's fate would be decided. There's one more thing you should know. Marta's expression turned grave. About Kael Thornheart. His interest in you isn't accidental. What do you mean? The old texts speak of bonds between moonspeakers and the strongest wolves. Not mate bonds exactly, but something deeper. A resonance between lunar power and apex predators. They called it the moon bond. When a moonspeaker awakens, sometimes a wolf of extraordinary strength will feel drawn to them, compelled to protect and serve them. It's possible that Kael... The door slammed open. Both women jumped as 4 guards entered, led by a stern-faced beta named Corvin. The council is assembled, he announced. Sera, daughter of the fallen house of Nightwhisper, you are summoned to stand before judgment. Sera rose on shaking legs. Her house name, she hadn't heard it spoken in years. After her parents died in a border skirmish when she was 10, the pack had stopped using it, preferring to pretend she had no lineage at all. But Nightwhisper, the name sang through her blood with recognition. Had her ancestors been moonspeakers too? Was that why her parents had been sent to the most dangerous border, where ambush was almost guaranteed? "I'm ready," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Marta grabbed her hand one last time. "Remember, child, you are not on trial for what you are. You're on trial for what they fear. Show them there's nothing to fear, and you might survive this night." Sera nodded and followed the guards up the stairs, into the fading afternoon light. The pack had gathered in a great circle around the council fire. Hundreds of faces turned toward her, some curious, some hostile, many simply afraid. At the center of the circle sat the 5 elders on carved wooden thrones. Alpha Aldrich stood beside them, his expression unreadable, and to his left, like a dark star drawing every eye, stood Kael Thornheart. Their gazes met across the distance, and that same electric recognition flared between them. Kael's ice-blue eyes promised protection, challenge, and something deeper that Sera didn't dare name. The guards led her to the center of the circle and forced her to her knees on the hard ground. The silver light beneath her skin pulsed brighter in response to the humiliation, and she heard gasps ripple through the crowd. "Sera Nightwhisper," Elderthorn's voice cracked like breaking ice. "You stand accused of wielding forbidden powers, of attacking pack warriors, and of bearing the cursed blood of the Moonspeakers. How do you answer these charges?" Sera raised her head and met the elder's gaze without flinching. "I answer that I have awakened to what I am," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the circle. "And I will not apologize for my blood, my gifts, or my right to exist." Murmurs exploded through the crowd. Elderthorn's face purpled with rage. But before he could respond, Kael stepped forward, his presence commanding instant silence. "Then let us speak of rights," he said, his deep voice resonating with authority beyond his years. "And of laws far older than pack tradition. Laws written in blood and moonlight, which even alphas are bound to honor." He turned to face the assembled pack, and Sera saw something that made her breath catch, respect bordering on reverence in the eyes of even the hardest warriors. "I bring a message from the ancient texts," Kael continued, "and a challenge that will determine not just this woman's fate, but the future of every pack in these territories." Kael's words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. "The Moon Treaty," he said, producing a scroll from within his cloak. The parchment was ancient, its edges yellowed with age, symbols in the old tongue glowing faintly in the firelight. Written 500 years ago by the Council of First Alphas and witnessed by the last Moonspeaker conclave before the purges. It states clearly, "Any who bear the moon-marked blood shall be held sacred and inviolate. To harm them is to invite the goddess's wrath upon your pack unto 7 generations." Elderthorn's face twisted with contempt. "That treaty is obsolete. There are no Moonspeakers left to protect. Are there not?" Kael's gaze swept across Sera, and she felt the weight of that look like a physical touch. "She stands before you, awakened and undeniable. The treaty binds you still. The Northern Pack seeks to interfere in our justice," Draven shouted from the crowd. "This is Silvercrest territory. We don't answer to. You answer to the old laws, or you answer to no one." Kael's voice went cold as winter wind. "Break the Moon Treaty and you declare yourselves outlaw. Every pack in the territories would have the right, the duty, to bring you to heel." Alpha Aldrich stepped forward, his weathered face grave. "You speak boldly for one so young, Kael Thornheart. But even if this treaty holds legal weight, it doesn't address the heart of the matter. This girl has power she cannot control. Today she struck down 3 warriors. Tomorrow what? She could destroy half the pack in a fit of rage." "I wasn't in a rage." Sera's voice cut through the murmurs. All eyes turned to her. "I was defending myself from warriors who meant to kill me for touching a sacred stone. A stone that belongs as much to the moon goddess as it does to any alpha." "You dare speak without permission?" Elder Thorn rose from his throne, fury radiating from him like heat. You are Omega, the lowest of the low, and you address an Alpha without. She is Moonspeaker. Kael's power flooded the circle, his wolf rising so close to the surface that his eyes blazed pure gold, and by the ancient laws, she outranks every wolf here save the goddess herself. The crowd erupted. Shouts of outrage mixed with gasps of shock. Several warriors shifted partially, their beasts responding to the challenge in Kael's words. Outrageous! Elder Thorn snarled. No single wolf stands above an alpha. That is the foundation of pack law. Pack law is 300 years old, Kael countered. The Moon Treaty is 500. Which law do you choose to honor, Elder? The one that serves your comfort, or the one that preserved our kind through the dark ages? Elder Kessa rose from her throne, ancient and bent with years, but her voice rang clear. The boy speaks truth. I remember my grandmother's words. She said the Moonspeakers were the goddess's balance against alpha tyranny, a check on absolute power. Without them we have grown imbalanced. Imbalanced? Draven pushed to the front of the crowd, his scarred face twisted with rage. We've grown strong, the strongest packs in living memory. We don't need moon witches to. Then prove it. Kael's challenge cut like a blade. If you're so strong, if your pack has no need of the old ways, face her in the trial of truths. Silence fell like a stone into still water. The trial of truths was ancient beyond memory, a ritual combat where the goddess herself was said to judge the righteousness of each combatant. Victory went not to the strongest, but to the one whose cause was just. You cannot be serious, Alpha Aldrich said slowly. The trial hasn't been invoked in a century. Most consider it legend. Then let us test the legend. Kael turned to face Sera, and something passed between them. An understanding, a promise, a challenge. If Sera survives the trial, you will accept that her awakening is the goddess's will. You will grant her freedom and status as befits a Moonspeaker, and you will begin teaching the pack to work with her gifts rather than fear them. And if she loses? Elder Thorn leaned forward, interest gleaming in his cold eyes. Then she submits to the council's judgment without protest. Her power will be bound by ritual, and she will serve the pack as you see fit. Kael's jaw tightened. Those are the terms. No. Sera's voice was quiet but firm. She rose to her feet, ignoring the guards who tried to force her back down. The silver light beneath her skin pulsed brighter, responding to her emotions. I will not agree to terms that end with my enslavement. If I'm to risk my life in this trial, then let the stakes be honest. Victory means freedom, complete freedom. The right to stay or leave as I choose. The right to learn my gifts without interference, and the right to be judged by my actions, not my blood. Bold words from one who attacked pack warriors this morning, Draven sneered. I defended myself from warriors who attacked me first. Sera turned to face him directly, and she had the satisfaction of seeing him flinch from the power in her gaze. Or have you forgotten that you struck me before my gifts manifested? That your wolves moved to kill an unarmed Omega who had done nothing but clean a ceremonial stone? Murmurs rippled through the crowd again, but this time they carried a different tone. Many had heard rumors of what transpired at the ceremonial grounds. Now they were hearing Sera's side, and it painted their warriors in a far less heroic light. Alpha Aldrich raised his hand for silence. His ancient eyes moved between Sera, Kael, and the assembled elders. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The trial of truths will commence at moonrise. Sera Nightwhisper will face. He paused, considering. She will face a champion of the pack's choosing in ritual combat. If she prevails, she gains her freedom and recognition as Moonspeaker. If she falls, her power will be bound and her fate decided by this council. These are my terms. Does anyone challenge them? Sera wanted to protest the vagueness of bound power and fate decided, but Kael caught her eye and gave the slightest shake of his head. Accept, his expression said. Trust. I accept, Sera said. As do I, Kael added, on behalf of the Northern Pack, who will witness this trial and hold all parties accountable to its outcome. Elder Thorn's smile was sharp as broken glass. Then let it be done, and let us see if the moon goddess truly favors this creature. He gestured dismissively at Sera. Draven, son of my blood and skilled warrior of this pack, will be our champion. Let his fangs test whether her power comes from the divine or the demonic. Sera's heart sank. Of course they would choose Draven. He was a born killer, trained from childhood in combat. His wolf was massive and battle-scarred. And his hatred for her ran bone-deep. The trial is not to the death, Elder Kessa interjected sharply. The old laws are clear. First blood, first submission, or first yield. No more, of course, Elder. Draven's smile promised violence regardless of rules. I'll be gentle. You have until moonrise to prepare, Alpha Aldrich said to Sera. The guards will escort you to the preparation chamber. You may have one attendant of your choosing. I choose Marta, Sera said immediately. Aldrich nodded. So be it. Kael Thornheart, as witness for your pack, you will observe the preparations to ensure no treachery occurs. Gladly, Alpha. Kael's gaze never left Sera's face. As the guards led her away from the circle, the crowd parted before her. She saw fear in their eyes, yes, but also curiosity. Wonder. Perhaps even hope. Kayla stood near the edge of the crowd, her beautiful face twisted with jealousy and rage. Wolfless wretch, she hissed as Sera passed. You think you're special, now? You think he— Her gaze flicked to Kael, will save you? You're going to die tonight, and everyone will forget you ever existed. Sera met her eyes calmly. Perhaps, or perhaps I'll finally become what I was always meant to be. Either way, I'll face it standing, not cowering. The preparation chamber was a small room off the main longhouse, traditionally used by warriors before major hunts or battles. Marta arrived moments after Sera, carrying herbs and oils used in ceremonial cleansing. You should have run, the old Omega said, but there was pride beneath her worry. Now you face a warrior in his prime, with nothing but untrained power and courage. I have more than that. Sera looked up as Kael entered, his presence filling the small space. I have the truth. Marta glanced between them, then smiled knowingly. I'll prepare the cleansing bath. You two should speak. She shuffled to the corner where a large wooden tub sat, leaving them alone. Kael moved closer, and Sera's breath caught. Up close his power was overwhelming, not threatening but intoxicating, like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing one step forward would mean either flight or fall. Why are you helping me? She asked quietly. You don't know me. Your pack has no stake in whether I live or die. Don't I know you? His hand rose slowly, giving her time to step away. When she didn't, he touched her cheek with surprising gentleness. I saw you in my dreams, Sera. For months now, a silver wolf made of moonlight, singing a song that made the stars weep. When I woke, I felt incomplete, like part of me was missing. His ice-blue eyes burned with intensity. Then I came here for the treaty negotiations, and I saw you in the communal hall. And I knew what? That you're my moon bond. The words were barely a whisper. The old texts speak of it, a connection between moon speakers and apex predators. My wolf recognized you before my human mind could understand. You're— He struggled for words. You're essential, like air, like water. Like the moon itself. Sera's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't understand this, any of this. Yesterday I was nothing, today I'm— You were never nothing. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and silver light sparked beneath his touch. You were waiting, we both were. The connection between them flared like lightning, and suddenly Sera saw flashes of Kael's memories. A young boy reading forbidden texts in a hidden archive, dreaming of the old ways. A warrior covered in blood, victorious but empty. A man staring at the moon, yearning for something he couldn't name. And she understood. He hadn't been helping her out of duty or politics. He'd been helping her because some part of him had been waiting his entire life for this moment. For her. The trial, she said breathlessly. I don't know how to fight. Then don't fight. His forehead rested against hers, and the simple intimacy of it made her want to weep. Do what you were born to do. Call the moon, sing the old songs, let your power flow like water instead of striking like lightning. Draven is a warrior, he'll expect violence. Give him something he can't comprehend instead. The True Howl, Sera realized. Marta told me about it. A song that reaches past pack bonds directly to the wolf soul. Exactly. You can't beat Draven in physical combat. But you don't need to. You just need to prove that your power comes from the goddess. That you're not a threat to the pack, but a gift they've been too blind to see. And if I fail? Kael's expression went fierce. Then I invoke the moon bond and challenge the council's authority. I'll take you north to my father's territory, and we'll deal with the consequences together. That would mean war between the packs. Then let there be war. His voice was steel wrapped in silk. I won't let them destroy you. I can't. My wolf would tear itself apart first. Sera felt tears sting her eyes. You barely know me. I know everything that matters. He pulled back slightly, meeting her gaze. I know you've endured years of cruelty without breaking. I know you have the courage to stand before your enemies without running. I know your power burns bright enough to make the alphas shake in their boots, and I know... His voice softened. I know that when I look at you, I see home. The words broke something open in Sera's chest. All her life she'd been alone. Cast aside, forgotten, dismissed as worthless. And now this warrior, this powerful, mysterious man who could have any Omega in any pack, looked at her like she was precious beyond measure. I don't know what I'm doing, she whispered. With any of this, neither do I. A small smile tugged at his lips. But I think that's part of the adventure. The bath is ready, Marta called from the corner, tactfully not looking at them. And the moon will rise within the hour. Time grows short. Kael stepped back, but kept his fingers laced with Sera's for one more heartbeat. Win tonight, prove them wrong, and tomorrow? His eyes promised futures she'd never dared imagine. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what comes next. Together, then he was gone, and Sera was left staring at the space where he'd stood, her hands still tingling from his touch. That, Marta said dryly, is a dangerous man to fall for. I'm not, Sera began, but stopped. Who was she fooling? In the span of a single day, Kael Thornheart had become essential to her. The thought of losing him, of never seeing him again, made her chest ache. Come, Marta gestured to the bath. Let me cleanse you in the old way. Your grandmother taught me the rituals before she died. If you're to face this trial as a true moon speaker, you should do it with the goddess's blessing. As Sera lowered herself into the herb-scented water, Marta began chanting in the old tongue. The words washed over her like waves, and the silver light beneath her skin responded, pulsing brighter with each verse. In 1 hour, the moon would rise, and Sera would face the trial that would determine not just her fate, but the future of the ancient power that ran through her veins. The ceremonial grounds blazed with torchlight as the full moon crested the eastern mountains. Sera stood at the circle's edge, dressed in the simple white robe of a trial combatant. The fabric was thin, offering no protection against claws or fangs. Behind her, Marta whispered final encouragements, but the words seemed to come from very far away. Across the circle, Draven waited in his wolf form, a massive beast of gray and black, easily twice the size of a normal wolf. His eyes glowed amber with bloodlust, and foam flecked his muzzle. He'd been given permission to shift early, to even the odds since Sera had no wolf of her own. It wasn't evening odds, it was a death sentence dressed up as fairness. The trial of truths begins at the moon's first full light, Alpha Aldrich announced, his voice carrying across the gathered pack. Hundreds had come to witness, every warrior, every elder, every family. Even the children watched from their parents' arms, sensing history unfolding. Kael stood beside the Alpha, his face a mask of controlled fury. He'd argued against Draven's early shift, but the council had overruled him. Now he could only watch, his fists clenched so tight that blood dripped from where his nails had pierced his palms. Their eyes met across the distance. Trust yourself? His gaze said. I believe in you. Sera drew a shaking breath and stepped into the circle. The moonlight hit her like a physical force. Power surged through her veins, stronger than ever before, as if the goddess herself had reached down to touch her. Silver light erupted from her skin, so bright that several pack members cried out and shielded their eyes. Draven snarled and lunged. He was impossibly fast, a blur of fur and fangs covering the distance in heartbeats. Sera raised her hands instinctively, and silver light shot forward. But Draven had fought magic wielders before. He twisted mid-leap, and her bolt went wide, scorching the earth where he'd been. His massive paw caught her across the chest, sending her flying backward. She hit the ground hard, the air driven from her lungs. Pain exploded through her ribs. Broken, definitely broken. The crowd roared, some with excitement, others with dismay. Sera struggled to her feet, tasting blood. Draven circled her slowly, savoring his advantage. He was toying with her, making her suffering last. The true howl, she thought desperately. I need to sing. But her broken ribs made breathing agony. How could she sing when she could barely draw breath? Draven lunged again. This time Sera rolled aside, her movement clumsy but effective. His jaws snapped shut on empty air. She tried to call her power, to create a shield like Marta had described, but panic scattered her concentration. Another strike. Claws raked across her back, shredding cloth and skin. Sera screamed, and the silver light flickered and died. Get up! Someone shouted from the crowd. Fight! But how could she fight this? Draven was everything she wasn't. Trained, powerful, merged perfectly with his beast. She was just a girl who'd discovered her gifts yesterday, who had no idea how to control them, who had survived 7 years of torture without breaking. The thought came clear and sharp through the pain. She'd endured cruelty that would have destroyed others. She'd kept her humanity when the pack tried to strip it away. She'd remained kind when kindness earned her only mockery. She was a survivor, and survivors didn't give up. Sera pushed herself upright as Draven charged again. This time, instead of defending, she opened herself fully to the moon's power. Let it fill every corner of her being, every broken piece, every scared and hurting part. The silver light returned, not as a weapon this time, but as pure radiance, and deep in her chest, beneath the broken ribs and fear and pain, something ancient stirred. The words of the true howl rose to her lips, lyrics in the old tongue that she'd never learned but somehow knew. She began to sing. The sound that emerged wasn't quite music. It was moonlight made audible, longing given voice, the cry of every wolf who had ever stared at the sky and felt their soul yearn for something greater. Draven froze mid-charge. His wolf eyes went wide with confusion, then with something like terror. His legs trembled. Against his will, his massive form began to shrink, forcing him back toward human shape. No, he gasped as his body betrayed him. No, I won't. But the true howl allowed no resistance. Every wolf in the ceremonial grounds felt its call. Warriors dropped to their knees, their beasts responding to authority that transcended pack bonds. Even Alpha Aldrich's eyes had gone distant, his wolf recognizing the voice of the goddess's chosen. Only Kael remained standing, his ice-blue eyes blazing with fierce pride. Sera's voice rose higher, the song building to a crescendo. Power poured from her in waves, not destructive, but transformative, healing. Several pack members who'd been carrying old injuries suddenly gasped as pain faded. A child's crooked leg straightened, Elder Kessa's blind eye cleared, sight restored after decades of darkness. This was what Moonspeakers had been. Not weapons, not threats, healers, protectors, bridges between the divine and the mundane. Draven lay prone before her now, fully human, tears streaming down his scarred face. Forgive me, he whispered. Goddess above, forgive me. I see what I've done, what we've all done. Sera's song faded to silence. She swayed on her feet, exhausted beyond measure. But she'd done it. Proved her power came from the divine. Proved she was no threat to the pack. Proved she was exactly what the old texts claimed. A moon speaker, blessed and sacred. Alpha Aldrich stepped forward, and Sera saw wonder written across his ancient face. "The trial is concluded," he said hoarsely. "The goddess has spoken. Sera Nightwhisper is traitor." The shout came from the edge of the crowd. Elder Thorn stood there, his face purple with rage, surrounded by a dozen warriors with weapons drawn. "This proves nothing but dark sorcery," he snarled. "She's bewitched you all, but I won't stand by and watch this pack fall to demonic influence." The warriors with him raised their bows, arrows nocked and aimed directly at Sera's heart. "In the name of the old ways," Thorn declared, "I pronounce judgment. Death to the Moon Witch!" The arrows flew, and Sera, too exhausted to move, could only watch them come. Kael moved faster than thought itself. One moment he stood beside Alpha Aldrich, the next, he was in front of Sera, his massive black wolf erupting from human skin in a transformation so swift it seemed like magic. The arrows meant for her heart buried themselves in his thick pelt instead. He roared, a sound that shook the very ground, and charged Elder Thorn's rebels. Chaos exploded across the ceremonial grounds. Loyal warriors shifted to defend their alpha. Thorn's faction scattered, some fleeing into the forest, others standing their ground to fight. The peaceful trial had become a battlefield in the span of a heartbeat. But Sera barely saw any of it. Her eyes were locked on Kael's wolf form, on the arrows protruding from his shoulder and flank, on the blood matting his midnight fur. "No," she whispered. Then louder, "No." Power detonated from her like a shockwave. Every wolf within the ceremonial grounds, friend and foe alike, was thrown backward by invisible force. They hit the ground hard but unharmed, their weapons clattering from suddenly nerveless fingers. Sera ran to Kael. He'd shifted back to human form, his face pale with pain but his eyes fierce and alive. "You're hurt," she said, her hands hovering over the arrow shafts, afraid to touch and cause more damage. "I've had worse." His smile was strained but genuine. "Though I'll admit, taking arrows for beautiful moonspeakers wasn't something I expected to do this week." "This isn't funny. You could have died. So could you." His hand caught hers, bringing it to rest over his heart. And that was unacceptable. The moon bond flared between them, bright and undeniable. Sera felt his pain as if it were her own, but also his fierce joy, his absolute certainty that protecting her had been worth any cost. "I can heal you," she realized. The words came from that deep well of instinct, the same place the True Howl had emerged from. The moon's power, it's not just for songs and shields, it can mend what's broken. "Then do it quickly," Alpha Aldrich's voice cut through the moment. He stood over them, his wolf prowling just beneath his skin. "Because we have bigger problems." Sera looked up. Elder Thorn's warriors had regrouped at the forest edge, their numbers swelling as more dissidents joined them. At least 30 wolves now, all armed, all hostile. "They won't accept your authority anymore, Aldrich," Thorn shouted across the distance. "You've been corrupted by moon magic. This pack needs cleansing, and we'll provide it, starting with that abomination's death." "Touch her and start a war you cannot win," Kael growled, struggling to his feet despite his injuries. Sera pressed him back down. "Don't move, please." She placed her hands over the worst arrow wound and called the moon's power. But this time, instead of destructive force, she willed it to heal, to knit flesh and bone, to restore what violence had torn apart. Silver light poured from her palms into Kael's body. He gasped, his back arching, and for a terrifying moment Sera thought she'd hurt him worse. Then the arrow shaft began to push out on its own, expelled by rapidly healing tissue. The wound closed, leaving behind only smooth skin marked with a faint silver scar. "Goddess above," Elder Kessa breathed. "I've read about this, but to see it." Sera moved to the second arrow, then the third, healing each wound with increasing confidence. By the time she finished, Kael was whole again. The only evidence of his sacrifice, the silver scars that traced across his shoulder like brands. He caught her wrist as she pulled away, his grip gentle but urgent. Thank you for saving my life. I'd do it again." His eyes held promises that made her heart race, 1,000 times over. "Enough!" Thorn's voice cracked like a whip. See how she seduces even the Northern Alpha's son? This proves her dark nature. She must be destroyed. His warriors began to advance, weapons raised. Sera stood, helping Kael to his feet. Around them, Alpha Aldrich's loyal wolves formed a protective circle, but they were outnumbered. A bloodbath was coming, and it was all because of her. "Stop," she said quietly. To her shock, everyone did. Even Thorn's advancing warriors paused, some looking confused about why they'd obeyed. The True Howl's echo, Sera realized. They'd all heard it, all felt their wolves submit to her voice. The effect lingered even now. "I won't let you kill each other over me," Sera continued, her voice carrying across the grounds with unnatural clarity. "Elder Thorn, you fear what I represent. I understand. Change is terrifying, especially when it threatens everything you've built your life upon. Don't presume to, but your fear doesn't give you the right to commit murder." Her words cut through his protest. "The trial was witnessed by 2 packs. The goddess spoke through me, healed your packmates, showed you my gifts come from the divine, yet you'd ignore all evidence because you can't bear to admit you might be wrong." Several of Thorn's warriors shifted uncomfortably. Doubt flickered across their faces. "I'm not your enemy," Sera said. "I never was. I've served this pack faithfully for 7 years despite your cruelty. I've bled for you, worked for you, endured your mockery without complaint. And now that I've awakened to what I am, you treat me like a monster." She let power gather around her, not threatening, just undeniable. Silver light danced across her skin, beautiful and terrible. "But here's the truth you can't escape. I am Moonspeaker. Blessed by the goddess, bound by ancient law that predates your authority. You cannot kill me without bringing divine wrath upon this pack. You cannot imprison me without breaking treaties that protect us all. And you cannot make me less than what I am, no matter how hard you try." Sera took a step forward, then another, walking toward Thorn's assembled warriors with her head high and her power blazing like a silver sun. "So I'm giving you a choice. Accept that the old ways are returning. Work with me to find balance between Moonspeaker gifts and pack law. Or—" She let the word hang. "Continue down this path of violence and fear, and watch your pack tear itself apart." She stopped 10 paces from Thorn, close enough to see the war raging in his eyes. Pride versus pragmatism, fear versus wisdom. "What will it be, Elder?" she asked softly. "Evolution or extinction?" For a long moment no one breathed. The full moon hung overhead, bathing everything in silver light, as if the goddess herself waited for Thorn's answer. Finally, one of his warriors lowered his weapon. Then another, then a dozen more, until only Thorn himself stood defiant. "This isn't over," he said, but the venom had drained from his voice, leaving only bitter defeat. "No," Sera agreed. "It's just beginning. But it begins with peace, not bloodshed." Thorn turned and stalked into the forest, his remaining loyalists trailing behind. Alpha Aldrich released a breath he'd been holding. "Well, that was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever witnessed." "Both," Kael said, coming to stand beside Sera. "Definitely both." Sera's legs gave out. The adrenaline that had sustained her drained away, leaving only exhaustion and pain from her still broken ribs. Kael caught her before she fell, cradling her against his chest. "I've got you," he murmured. "You're safe now," and surrounded by pack members who looked at her with new eyes, no longer with contempt, but with awe and perhaps the first seeds of respect. Sera finally let herself believe it might be true. 3 days after the trial, Sera stood before the assembled council once more. But this time, not as a prisoner. The longhouse had been transformed. Where once only elders sat in judgment, now a new throne had been carved from white oak and positioned beside Alpha Aldrich's seat. Symbols in the old tongue covered its surface, glowing faintly with moonlight even in the daytime. The Moonspeaker's throne, empty for 3 centuries. Waiting. "The council has deliberated," Alpha Aldrich announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the packed hall. "We have consulted the ancient texts, prayed to the moon goddess for guidance, and listened to testimony from every faction of this pack. We are ready to render our judgment. Sera's heart hammered. Beside her, Kael stood close enough that their shoulders touched, a silent show of support that had scandalized the more traditional pack members. A Northern Alpha's son, standing with a Silvercrest Omega? Unthinkable. Yet here they were. Elder Kessa rose, her newly healed eye bright and clear. 3 days ago we witnessed the return of a power we thought lost forever. We saw healing where we expected destruction, we saw mercy where we anticipated vengeance, and we saw courage that put our warriors to shame. She turned to face Sera directly. You could have fled when given the chance, you could have used your gifts to strike us down when we threatened you. Instead, you chose to stand and speak truth, even knowing it might cost your life. That is the mark of a true moon speaker, one who serves the goddess's will above personal safety. Elder Mora stood next. She'd been one of the voices calling for Sera's power to be bound, but something had shifted in her expression. I confess I feared you. The old stories paint moon speakers as wielders of terrible power, and I saw only danger. But these 3 days have taught me differently. You've walked among us freely, healing those who ask, teaching those who wish to learn, showing nothing but patience with our ignorance. You've proven yourself not just powerful, but wise, not just gifted, but kind. Only Elder Thorn's seat remained empty. He'd fled into the mountains after the trial, taking his most devoted followers with him. Some said he'd gone mad with shame. Others whispered he was gathering forces for another attack. But today wasn't about Thorn. Today was about the future. Alpha Aldrich stood, his ancient face solemn. Sera Nightwhisper, daughter of the fallen house, bearer of the moon-marked blood, the council recognizes you as true moonspeaker blessed by the goddess and protected by laws older than pack memory. We grant you freedom to stay or leave as you choose, status equal to an alpha's in all matters of pack governance, and the right to teach your gifts to any who show the aptitude. He gestured to the empty throne. We offer you the seat that has waited these 300 years. Will you accept? Will you help us rebuild what our ancestors destroyed when they let fear override wisdom? Sera looked at that throne, symbol of everything she'd never dreamed possible. 3 days ago, she'd been nothing, less than nothing. Now they offered her power beyond imagining. But power had never been what she wanted. I'll accept, she said quietly, on one condition. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. One did not make conditions with the council. Speak, Aldrich said, though his lips twitched with something almost like amusement. No more Omega caste? Sera's voice grew stronger. No more wolves deemed worthless because they're nurturers instead of warriors. No more children beaten for being gentle when the pack prizes strength. If I'm to help lead this pack into a new age, it will be an age where every wolf, Alpha, Beta, and Omega alike is valued for their gifts rather than judged by arbitrary hierarchies. Shocked silence filled the hall. She just demanded they overturn social structures that had existed since the first Alphas. Then from the back of the hall, someone began to clap. Slowly at first, then faster. Others joined in, mostly Omegas, but also some Betas and younger wolves who'd chafed under the old ways. The applause spread like wildfire, until even Elder Mora was nodding approval. You drive a hard bargain, Moonspeaker, Aldrich said, but his eyes gleamed with pride. Very well. Let it be known from this day forward, Silvercrest Pack recognizes no caste as lesser. We are one pack, bound not by dominance, but by mutual respect and shared purpose. He extended his hand. Do we have an accord? Sera gripped his wrist in the ancient gesture of alliance. We do, Alpha. Then take your place, Sera Nightwhisper. Take your throne and help us forge a better future. Sera walked to the white oak throne and sat. The wood warmed beneath her, and the glowing symbols brightened as if recognizing their rightful occupant. Power hummed through her. Not her own gifts, but something older. The accumulated wisdom of every moonspeaker who'd sat here before, their knowledge flowing into her like water finding its level. She gasped as memories flooded her mind, healing rituals, protective wards, songs that could call rain or calm storms. Everything the moonspeakers had known, preserved somehow in this throne, waiting for the blood to wake again. When the visions faded, she found Kael kneeling before her throne, his ice blue eyes blazing with fierce pride.